So how is it like to have 30 million at the age of 33? This is Mission at Night, no bullshit business. Hi, welcome to Mission at Night. Here, we uncover the no bullshit business from successful individuals and ignite your dreams to success. In today's episode, we have a gentleman who started off his business at the age of 17 years old. And for 17 years, he kept that business and sold off at age 33 for 30 million. Here today, to share his story with us, we have Alvin Poh. Hi Alvin, welcome to our podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's super fun. It's very, very professional.
So let's kick off with this, What got you starting off your entrepreneurship journey at the age of 17 years old?
I wasn't an entrepreneur then. Like back then when I was a kid, I didn't even know what entrepreneurship meant. So I think the story has to start way back. First of all, I don't really come from a very well-to-do family. So as a kid, if I wanted to buy anything from like snacks to video games to comic books, I had to find my own source of money.
So do you manage to buy video games?
Yeah, later part of my life, I played a lot of video games and I had to like buy them myself. But because I didn't really have the pocket money for that, I had pocket money for like recess food, for like transportation, but I didn't have money for buying video games. So I had to like find ways of raising that kind of cash myself. So I started way back when I was a kid. And I remember in primary school, I was doing all kinds of things. I was just telling my friend this, even as a primary school kid back then, I don't know whether it still happens now, but when we have like free time at school, we'll play country erasers.
Oh yeah, the one that you flip the erasers?
Yeah. So little like rectangles, and then these are the erasers that have country flags on them. And you basically just battle with each other, right? And then try to win each other's country erasers. And I realized that you can actually buy country erasers cheaper.
Okay.
Most of the times, people just buy them from the school bookstore. But I realized the bookstore near my place actually sells them cheaper. And we're not talking like dollars. We're talking about like maybe 1 cent to like some fraction of a.
I remember like 10 cents or 20 cents for one eraser or something like that.
So if you buy this big box of them, then you save like a few cents, right? And man, to me, I was like, oh wow, that was like a revelation, right? And I thought, oh cool, this is a way for me to make money. And I did that. And you just, after a few boxes, you now have enough money. You're not a millionaire, but you have enough to buy a bowl of like jelly from the school canteen or something. And to me, I was
money.
Like, whoa, I get like a free like snack. And man, I think that was like the start of entrepreneurship for me. I didn't know it was entrepreneurship. To me, it was just trying to make money, right? If you look at that, that was like such a basic version of essentially what is known as arbitrage. You buy something at a lower price and then you try to sell it at a higher price somewhere else. That was what I did. I did all kinds of things. I even did. So, nowadays there's like SaaS, right? Software as a service, infrastructure as a service, marketing as all these things. So back then as a primary school kid, I remember I went into homework as a service.
So what, you do homework for others?
Yeah, I did.
And that's primary school?
In primary school, late primary school, I think primary 5, primary 6 or something, still wearing shorts. I don't remember when exactly, but I was still wearing, I remember myself wearing shorts, right? And that was the uniform that we wore. And I got into trouble.
So what, you charge too high, $1 per page?
No. I didn't really know much about pricing. My pricing was basically whatever the market was willing to pay, right?
Okay.
I.e., all my classmates, right?
Yeah,
like, hey,
your friends.
All of us got to do homework, right? And you don't like to do homework, right? What if I can do it for you? Oh, homework as a service.
Yeah.
And I charged people. It was working for a few weeks, I think, and it was like much more money than selling country erasers. But then I got caught.
How did that happen?
I didn't even think it was illegal, but then I got into trouble because I think somebody told their parents or their parents found out, and then they complained to the teachers, and the teachers came to the source, i.e. me, and then I got into trouble and said I couldn't do that anymore. Yeah, so that was the kind of stuff I did when I was a kid.
Primary school, you started selling erasers, you start selling service, right? So how did you started off Vodien at the age of 17?
So you know how I said I was playing video games?
Yeah.
Computers were a big part of my life. My dad at that point of time was a sales consultant. And he needed to do like documents and stuff. So he had a computer at home. When he was not using a computer, I was, and I just do everything. I remember at the start, I didn't even have video games. And I'll just be very happy, like, typing out stuff on the word processor or any other document or program software that I could find. Because just playing around with the computer was so fascinating. Back then, I mean, everything was all manual. They're all like pen and paper, and then suddenly you have this like computer, right? And then you could play with the keyboard and the mouse.
That's the modem era, right? That's the one
Yeah,
that go,
yes. So I got a computer even before the modems come out, because the modems were actually more expensive. Like the computer was a fixed cost, and then the modem with the internet subscription was very expensive for us. We couldn't afford something like that until much later. I was in my, I think, secondary 3 or 4 when I was 15 or 16 years old, before my family actually got internet. And the internet was like, wow, I think it must be 25, 26 kbps or something. It was like so slow. The only thing you could do was to like maybe send text or non-image, non-graphics.
Was that before the like MSN Messenger, NRC?
Yeah, that was before. I was using ICQ and IRC, actually. IRC, yeah, because all those were very text-based, right?
Yeah, so for any of the viewers out there, if you know this term, you know your age. If you don't know this term, good for you.
Oh man, yeah, that's my age. Yeah, so IRC was actually a really important part of my life, because IRC, that was the granddaddy of chat rooms, right? These days we have Discord, Skype, Microsoft Teams, Slack. Back then it was IRC.
Yes.
And as a kid, again, to paint the context, I grew up in this very, very average, normal Singapore family, right? And my social circle was basically just whoever I was like, hanging out with around my void deck after school, or my school friends.
Yeah.
Right? That's my social circles. That's it. And suddenly with IRC, my social circles just expanded like tremendously. Suddenly I was talking to some guy from like Australia about video games.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be talking to a guy in like, I don't know, the US or something about some other thing, and suddenly you have access to all these different people, right? And you'll be just like chatting and talking and all that, right? So I loved it. It was such a big change, and I spent so much time on it. Now IRC was important because I was spending so much time on it. I was always like looking at how I can modify and play around with IRC. And the cool thing about IRC is it allows you to download theme packs, templates and stuff that changes the look of IRC.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall that because I don't remember downloading it. It probably existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely existed, because that was how I got started learning about scripting, programming, graphics design, and all that.
Of course, I touched base IRC for a very short while. The next thing I know was MSN Messenger, where we send the smiley emoticons and all that.
Yeah, so IRC, you could do that too. In fact, you can probably do more with IRC than MSN. You could like create chat rooms, you could add actions, you could kick ban people, you could like do whatever. Like you could even run bots on IRC. Way back, before Spotify was around,
right?
IRC was one of the ways to, share
music files and all, right? Yes, I remember that.
Sometimes illegally too, but that was the way that people were communicating and distributing stuff and reaching out and making friends, and IRC was the place to be. So I downloaded theme packs, I modified IRC, learning from like whatever that was out there. So I downloaded everything first and looked at what was done well, what I liked, what I didn't like, right? And then I started reverse engineering, right? Trying to figure out how they did it. And I learned scripting and programming from there.
And that was what, 16?
15, 16 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, because of that, because I was spending so much time on the computers, like my family, my relatives, my friends, they all know that I was always on the computer. One of my uncles actually approached me. He has a small business, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, you seem like you know how to use computers a lot. Can you help me design a website?" And this was way back, right? Like everybody didn't have a website. The internet was just in its infancy and just taking off. And I was like, "Sure, yeah, I can." And I didn't know how to at that point in time. I just said yes.
You just took the job. And
I
just say yes and took the job.
Yeah, yep, let's do it. I took the job, said yes, and then figured out how to do it.
Right.
So it was the same process and methodology that happened with websites as well. I basically just looked at all the websites around, downloaded the source code, figured out how everything worked, and then created my own. So way back, again, there's like these days you have Wix, Shopify, and whatnot.
Yeah.
At CLDY, we help people with their websites, right? Again, that's another story. That's how I got into web hosting. So these days, there are so many tools and platforms to help people create their websites. Back then, it was like TextPad, and then you just code everything out by hand, whether it's HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and then
Very
it's like,
infant of all.
yeah, it was very primitive.
Yeah.
And then that was how I got started. So once I actually figured it out, delivered the website to my uncle, it just blew my mind because now I realized I had a monetizable skill set.
Yeah.
Now, instead of like, products arbitrage and whatnot, now I had this skill set. I could now create websites for people, and people would pay money for that. So again, it was like, as a kid, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then I started going out looking for clients.
It's a booming industry then, right? Because it just started off. People have no clue how to create websites.
Yeah. So I created website after website after website. And it was fairly easy to find clients also. And that was how I got started as a freelance web designer. All the way until I met my co-founder and then started Vodien. So that was another story. Like, man, I was such a rebellious, mischievous kid, right? So I didn't really do much in school except read and play video games.
Okay. I mean, that's typical for all students nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I was like, man, I was particularly adamant about the fact that I was in school and doing something that I didn't like, right? I didn't understand why I was studying physics, English, all the subjects, math, right, Chinese, and all that I wanted to do was to play games or work on this business of mine. And so when it came to O levels, I didn't understand why suddenly all my friends disappeared. During O levels, when you're 16 years old, suddenly all my friends disappeared because their parents, the teachers,
back
told
home,
them,
studying, working.
Yeah, slapped some sense with them and go study, right?
Yeah.
And that was what happened to me also. My parents also said hey, this is an important year. O levels is up. You've got to do well, right? And I was like, oh man, all my friends have disappeared. My parents seem to think that this O level exam is so crucial and whatnot. So I just said, okay, fine. Let's just get this over and done with. Study as much as I can, get to a JC, and then, life will be much better. So
what's your score for O level? Now I'm curious because it seems to me that you didn't study.
Yeah.
Right. So
but here's the thing. There's so many things that I realized, right? One is that actually the secondary school makes you take on more subjects than is required. If you go to O levels, right, actually you only need 4 or 5 subjects.
6 subjects. 6 L1, R5, right?
R5, yeah. So 6 subjects, right? But then I think I took 10 or something. So then I started cutting down the subjects that I didn't like. Why am I studying that? Right?
Yeah.
So if you know about the Gallup's strengths finder, this is exactly what they say. So why focus on your weakness when you can focus on your strength? So I focus on my strengths. But okay, long story short, I did pretty well. I think my score got me into the JC.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, whew, good job. Okay, then life will be good, right? When I went to the JC, I was I felt so deflated because when I went there, it was not what I expected. It was, at least for me, I felt like it was very regimental. It was very competitive. I didn't know anybody also. Most of my friends go like everywhere, right? After O levels, everybody go everywhere. I only know like one or two people from my secondary school, and like it was a very, very, for me, unpleasant experience. And again, it made me question like, why am I doing this again, right? Like, I thought the whole point was to make life better, but now I'm doing something that I don't understand why I'm doing. So I actually approached my parents and said, I don't want to do this. I want to go spend more time learning about computers. So back, I don't know whether it works now the same way, but back then there was this like 3-month period where you could go to the JC, and then after that, then you start.
I think there still is. Yeah, I think it's the pre-one before you go to poly or something like that. Yeah, something like that. I think there is. I believe so.
So during that phase, I was like, okay, my parents want me to go to school, so I go to school, but I don't need to do anything in school. I just have to make sure that I'm there. Yeah. That's it, right? Then I started doing every other thing. I just started like reading my books and whatnot. I basically was the worst student my JC has ever seen. And in that same period of time, I started going to check out the polytechnics because they would have open houses as well. So I'll go there and find out what they were doing and how they were running their programs, especially the computer-related programs. And I went around poly to poly. That's when I found Temasek Polytechnic.
So from a JC, you went to TP?
Yes. Yes, I went to TP. I checked out a few, then I went to TP and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Great campus, great subjects and whatnot. And I went there. Now, this is important. And it's the reason behind this tattoo also, right? Because looking back, right, if I had not done that, if I had not like said no to what my parents told me to do, what like normal society said I should do, like go to do well O levels, go to JC, blah 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 blah. If I had not said no to that and figure out what I wanted to do, I wouldn't have gone to a polytechnic at 17 years old. On the very first day of orientation of my polytechnic diploma course, I wouldn't have gone by myself to a completely unknown and foreign school and sat down beside this one guy who would turn out to be my business co-founder of Vodien for 17 years, right? So my life would have completely changed. And I think that's the power of knowing what drives you, what you want, and having the courage to really say no to a lot of narratives that are being forced upon us.
Right. So that's where you met your co-founder, and that's where your direction has been set.
Well, I wouldn't say it's been set, but like, that's how things got kick-started. Yeah.
So both of you, how do you all start off Vodien at 17? Because that's the first year of poly, right?
Yeah. So remember that web design business that I'm doing on the side? That was something that still continued because it was like flexible time hours and like, things that I absolutely love doing. And so I was still continuing that. And this friend of mine, John, knew that also, right? So after a while, I was like, hey man, we do so well in school. We do everything in school together, like assignments, homework, exams,
best
projects.
Buddies.
Best buddies, right? Best work buddies. Because we had a very, very focused goal. Had to graduate from Temasek Polytechnic with good grades because our parents wanted us to go get into university. So that was our goal. So we did everything together. Very, very, very good working relationship. And so I was like, hey, do you want to do web design together also? So I asked him and like we started teaming up and doing the freelance web design work together. Right? In our minds, 1 + 1 is not 2 or 1 + 1 is like 5, 6, 7, 10 or whatever, right?
Yeah,
much
multiply the efforts. Yeah,
exactly. Which happened. So we could take on bigger projects, more clients, so on and so forth. We did that for about a year plus.
Okay.
And from that business, we did pretty well. But as we progressed through poly, one of the problems was that you get bogged down by work, you get like your exams.
It's a lot of projects and all, right? In poly.
So you get very, very busy. That's when we realized, man, we've got to scale up this business. And in the traditional or in the typical sense of business, right, there's service-based businesses and there's product-based businesses.
Right.
The web design business was a service-based business, which is great. It's very low capital, but it has certain limitations, especially when it comes to scaling up.
Yes.
I won't go into details about that, but we had to find a way to really break the ratio between like the time invested into the business as well as the ability to drive revenues. And that was only possible if we made it into a product-based business. Again, looking back, I'm able to say this, but at that point of time when we were like 18, 19 years old, right, we had no clue what all these terms meant. We only knew that we had to change the business. And when, as kids, we were just looking at what we had at our disposal, all the resources available. And we had all these clients that we served before. All of them all had their own websites and they all needed web hosting. And we were just thinking to ourselves, oh, if that's the case, then maybe we should go look into web hosting as a service. And we did that, right? So it was, again, not a straight line growth, right? But it was like this roller coaster, ups and downs and whatnot. And we slowly figured it out, learning how to build our own servers, deploy the instance on the server, the OS and whatnot, and cPanel, the control panel, finally allowing people to actually host their websites and emails on our servers. And then Vodien, the web hosting company, was started.
So with that start off at the age of 17, right? There's in that 17 years while building Vodien, right? Before you selling it off, right? There's bound to be a lot of roadblocks, because you mentioned quite a few there, right? What was the biggest in that 17 years?
I think the biggest came from when we first started. When we first started, it was insane because we had only enough cash to buy one server.
Okay.
And if you think about it, that meant 100% of our business was on that server alone, which is very scary. If you had like, a computer like this, any computer, right? You know that there'll be a chance of some failure, some hardware failure, motherboard failure, hard drive failure, power supply, whatever. Computers are computers.
Yep.
Even enterprise servers, they break down. And we were like, man, we just hope and pray every day that everything will be smooth.
So it runs on one server, no backup at all?
None. We don't have money for backups. That was all that we could afford. So that server lasted for about, not lasted, but we used only one server for about the first 2-3 months.
Oh, okay.
Then the first priority we had was to really invest into our second server. And finally, we could sleep easy,
more relaxed.
Because now we are 50-50 and it was a lot better after that. But yeah, it was all these things, right? Just figuring out cash flow, like, man, how are you going to buy this hardware? And you might think it's only at the start, but as you grow, these demands still happen on your business. So yes, first time you have to buy one server, and as you grow, now you have to buy 2 servers. And then a few months later, as the business grows and customers grows, now you have to buy like 4 servers, 5 servers, 10 servers. And there's always this like outpacing of revenue that you must maintain. Otherwise, you don't have the cash flow to buy and invest back into the business. And so we have to balance that and make sure that, we had all this spare cash as a cushion so that I could always continue to invest into the business.
So over here, I heard a few things. Number one is I think the cash flows is important.
Yeah.
Right. I think for our viewers out there, in case you guys don't know, Alvin right now, right, runs Super Scaling, right? He's actually a business coach, right? Coaching multiple businesses, right, on how to scale their own business. Yeah. So on that topic itself, on cash flow, how important in terms of cash flows compared to innovations, compared to because when we talk about entrepreneurship, we say, hey, USP, we talk about we may need to be the best and all, but very little people understand the finances behind it, right? How important is that?
It's crucial. And business is not just one thing that makes everything work. It's a combination of all these factors, which is why in super scaling, there's a 5-step framework that we use, the 5 pillars, right? In order to make sure that the business has all the foundations in place. So cash flow is one of the aspects, and cash flow, it needs to be there. Every business is different though. There are service-based businesses, there are product-based businesses. But it's just important to be aware of your inflow and outflow of cash. I know of startups that have raised millions of dollars of cash, offices around multiple countries, staff strength of like 100 or more, still facing the issue of cash flow because they don't have the visibility of what's coming in and what's coming out. It gets even more complex when you introduce things like payment terms, right? Account receivables, account payables,
Yes.
especially people with like credit of like 90 days, 120 days, then you now need to really be sure of your cash in and cash out, because you can go pay for something that you don't have the cash for in the future.
Yep.
Right. And you're gonna face this crunch because suddenly now your what they call the burn rate, right, is much shorter, and you don't even know, right, because you didn't project or you didn't like foresee that, and that's super scary. So, depending on the business, that might be something that might be crucial.
So maybe a question just to randomly ask you, right? Okay, so I mean you've seen many businesses rise and fail, right? How would you say that? How much percentage do you think that finances or cash flow, right, contribute to their failures?
There are a lot of reasons for failure, but the way I see it, cash flow, is like oxygen to businesses. It's like oxygen to us. Cash flow, is to businesses. And if you don't have a good supply of cash flow, then
Yeah.
you're going to face problems. And this is crucial. This is life or death already, right?
Right.
If you don't have it, that's it already. GG. You can have the best marketing funnel, the best team, you can have like everything. But if you don't have cash flow,
Yep.
you're gonna die.
I see.
Right.
Right.
And,
So that's the first part. Now the second part is I heard you saying, for that 3 months, right? You couldn't sleep, you couldn't rest out. How do you get out of that? Because I think now in our today's society, in fact, right, we talk about mental wellness. Right? How do you actually cope during that period?
well, when you don't have a choice, you really don't have a choice. That's the only thing that you're focused on. Like, it's like if you throw someone into the sea, right, and he has no other like alternative but to try to stay afloat and survive. That was kind of like the situation we faced, right?
Right.
You have to get air and you just got to tread water or do whatever it takes to get your face out of the water and breathe. And that was what we felt. I mean, what's the alternative? Alternative is we just close the business and then we have to find another business or another source of income to survive, because if not, we're going to face even bigger problems. And so forth, it was something that we had to sacrifice and had to just fully commit to.
So those are bad past or the history, right? The darker side of things. So let's go to some happier times now, all right? That 30 million when you sold off Vodien, how did that happen?
That happened in 2017, and it wasn't something that we expected, right? The business was run by my co-founder and myself, just the two of us. And at a point in time, we weren't even like looking at a exit. It was a very, very hot space. This was pre-COVID, and Singapore was the MICE capital of the region. Anytime you want to think of a convention exhibition, it's got to be Singapore. Right? Every month or every quarter, at least, there's something that's happening in Singapore. And it's the same for our industry as well. And there will be cloud hosting, infrastructure, computing, all those conferences happening all the time. And every single time there'll be a conference, international visitors will come in.
Yes.
And invariably, we will always get interest. Somebody will come find us, they will have conversations, and they will invariably ask us if we are interested in an M&A. We were the market leaders already at that point of time, and we were not very interested in most of them, because a lot of them were from either funds that were looking to do a financial roll up, or maybe they were another business that were looking to maybe get into the web hosting space. It wasn't very attractive or exciting for us. So it took us a while, and we always said no. But it took us a while, and suddenly this guy came around. And this was the story of Dreamscape. It was funny because Dreamscape, the CEO, he runs the Australian business, and Dreamscape is the holding company. The operating company was Crazy Domains. They are the largest in Australia at that point in time, right? And they were coming to Singapore. The whole intent was to expand into Southeast Asia. So the Dreamscape CEO actually dropped me a LinkedIn message, which I completely missed.
Okay.
I just didn't even, I don't really use LinkedIn back then. So I didn't even see it. So I ignored him for a while. And then a few days later, he was like, he just called up my support team because there's a support hotline, right? And then introduced
So
himself.
you went through the support hotline out.
Yeah, and then he introduced himself and said he needed to speak to me. And it was funny because we had offices in the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
And my office was literally next door to his office. Like not doors in like the same floor, but like building to building was the next
In
building
Philippines.
in the Philippines. And all of them actually knew each other. The teams actually knew each other because we were so close, same industry and whatnot. He eventually got hold of me. And then that kick started everything. He and his team flew down from Australia to Singapore, had an initial meeting. We talked about stuff. It's quite funny because they made an initial offer, a price,
Okay.
which my co-founder and I laughed at because it was so low.
Okay.
And then we made a counter offer. And then after a few weeks, they were evaluating the situation and considering things and calculating things and finally said yes to the deal.
But what makes the decision for you to actually sold off such a company that you built for 17 years?
Initially, it wasn't just an outright sale. Initially, it was a merger. We
Right.
thought it would be great because now we could combine forces with another entity, with a bigger entity,
Right.
and look at expanding
Right.
into Southeast Asia.
So you see them as a partner initially.
Yes.
And then what happened thereafter?
You get conflicts that happen with acquisitions. So after a while, my co-founder and I felt like, the different directions didn't seem to work out anymore. And so we decided to leave. But that wasn't the end of the story also. So Vodien got acquired by Dreamscape, right? That was in 2017. And then there was a big group already with different brands as they expanded. And then that group got acquired again by Web.com. In about, I think, 2 years after that. And then Web.com, that group, merged and got acquired or something into a new
Okay, that's like 1, 2, 3, 4 times.
Yeah, at least 3 times.
Okay, 3 times.
Yeah. So Vodien now is a completely different animal from when we started, right? Very, very different. Which is why we started CLDY. Because we feel that there's a lot of gaps in the market right now, a lot of things to solve. The same reasons why we started Vodien in 2002, they still exist right now, right?
Yes.
How do you find a provider with the right kind of speed that you want in terms of the website performance, email performance? How do you find somebody with the stability that you want? You don't want your website to go down, emails to go down, right? How do you provide that kind of stability? How do you make sure that security is there as well, right? Are there things in place to prevent brute force attacks, DDoS attacks, any kind of attacks, right? Because you don't know, right? Your website's online.
Yes.
And attackers are there all the time. How do you put in these protections, right? It's not just on your website, but the server that the website is on as well, the network that the server is in. These are all things that we looked at as well. And lastly, support. How do you make sure that the support person knows how to answer your question and is not motivated by things like sales, right?
Yes.
I've heard of support people that were upselling things to customers, even though they don't need it.
Right.
And that's terrible because as a customer, when you approach a business, most of the time you're coming from a point where, or a place that you don't know about things. That's why you're a customer of a service. Otherwise, you just do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So as a customer, if the service provider is misleading you and taking advantage of you, then there's a big problem.
Yes, it is.
So support is a big crucial area to fix as well.
CYDL, is that right?
CLDY.
CL?
Stands is short for cloudy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you what is it short form for?
Yeah, we want to get cloudy.com, but the problem with cloudy.com, when you go there, right, it's like, this very, very old, antique looking 1970s website. Cloudy.com. I think it's still online. I go there and then I was like, oh shit, maybe it's available. And then I realized Cloudy.com is owned by this guy called, I think, John Cloudy. His last name is Cloudy. And I was like, oh man, give up. It's not possible. So we went to get CLDY.
So with CLDY currently right now, you guys provide hostings. You guys provide building our websites and everything else as well?
We don't build websites, but we do hosting, right? So web hosting, email hosting, cloud hosting, all kinds of hosting, domain names as well. Yeah.
And
people.
These are, again, the locally company itself, right? There's no other external or rather overseas companies that's actually putting this.
Yeah.
Well, so for any entrepreneurs out there that needs a web hosting services, there you go. right? Got one source of revenue, right? Support a fellow entrepreneur here.
Yeah, we're looking forward to support the industry as well. Like make sure that they get everything that they wanted, and all the support, speed, security, stability that they need for their website, for their business online.
Yeah, so now I actually want to touch on a little bit more things after the sale of Vodien, right? So for our viewers out there who don't know, after Alvin sold off Vodien, right? Like any one of us, we will have bought cars, we will have bought assets, right? Things that are fun, things that we wanted to get out from our dreams, But what Alvin did was he did that and he sold it off. But you want to share a bit of that whole experience? What happened at the start and what caused you to sold all these things off?
Yeah, so I guess you're referring to the Lambo and the watches.
Yes.
So yeah, I got into the whole mind space of like buying fancy watches, fancy cars. I bought a Lamborghini. It was a Gallardo LP 560. Dash 4 is a convertible.
There you go.
And I thought that was the thing that you're supposed to get. Society says, "Oh wow, measure of success. Look at how successful this person is."
Yeah.
And you buy a car like that. Oh wow, so cool. But no, it doesn't work that way. Nothing happens, right? In fact, what typically happens is that you get home and now there's this like really expensive car in your car park and you have to worry about servicing, you got to worry about repairs, so one thing about the Lambo, right, that really annoys me is that I cannot go anywhere. I remember I dropped off a friend at what's that called? Liang Court.
Okay.
Outside Liang Court. Now I think it's gone already, but Liang Court at that point of time there was this like driveway or drive through. So I went there, right, and I was like dropping off my friend. So I pull up next to the curb. And then, my friend gets off, right?
Yeah.
She opens the door.
And hits.
And the door gets stuck in the curb. Because I think the Lambo's a bit lower.
It's low, yes.
So it's not like Aston Martin that opens upwards, right? It's just a direct, like, open to the side kind of thing. And it's not the Aventer door that opens upwards. So anyway, mine was a Gallardo. The door opened up and it got stuck in the curb. Then I was like, whoosh. I heard the...
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man. Of course, I cannot say anything, right?
Yeah,
I was like, don't worry. Then I got out of my car, went to the other side, looked at the door, and I was like trying to open and trying to move it, and it couldn't budge. So I really give it a good shove, and then finally got it to close.
Yeah.
But my Lambo ownership was filled with so many, I feel, things that didn't need to happen to me. Like, I could go on and on, but this is not a Lambo ownership podcast, so I won't bore your viewers about that. But yeah, essentially, I started asking myself, like, what the hell is this? What the point of all this, right? Why am I having this car, watch? Is it for myself or is it for something else or someone else, right? And I realized it wasn't something that really made me happy. And so after I sold my business, I had this whole period of self-reflection and introspection where I had to really ask myself, like, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And I realized a lot of it didn't really resonate with me. A lot of it didn't really gel with what I want, what my values were. And I felt so misaligned. So it was 2018 when I fully left Vodien. 2017 was the sale, and then I stayed on for 1 year. In 2018, I fully left.
Okay.
I stayed on not because I had to, but because I wanted to.
Yep.
I could literally leave on the day itself, but I stayed on
It's a
because it
baby
was
you
like,
built up after all.
yeah. So I stayed on for 1 year. And after I left fully, I literally, over the period of about 4 to 6 months, sold everything that I owned. Everything. So
Everything.
everything except maybe enough to fill 2 duffel bags. And that was it.
That's a lot of things that you sold off.
I sold everything. And you start realizing that after a while, after a few years of life, you accumulate so much that you don't know like the reason for.
Yeah.
So first of all the luxury stuff I completely got rid of, like the watches, the cars, I got rid of all of that. Even the junk around the house, I got rid of everything. Even my wardrobe, I got rid of everything as well. Everything. Like nowadays I just wear a black t-shirt, not one shirt. I have one kind of shirt, multiple shirts like this.
Yeah.
And most of the times I think all the time people see me with this outfit.
It's our identity now.
Well, it's my uniform, I guess. And I realized that after all this like clearing, I just felt this mind space that I previously didn't have.
Right.
Like I felt so free. And it's something as simple as like, waking up and opening up your wardrobe and no longer having to decide what to wear for the day. I just have one thing and there's no choice there. There's no need to make a decision there. And so the level of decision fatigue that I feel is much, much lower. But more importantly, I think going through that process in 2018 really gave me that mind space that I needed to just clear my head and figure out what is it that I was going to do. And this is a theme that I think helps people a lot. Whenever, it brings us back to that saying that's very, very popular. People always say that, oh, you're the sum of, or the average of like your five closest people, and your environment makes you and whatnot, right? So it is so crucial because I realized that every single time I had a change of environment in my life, I could change who I was. Let me give you an example. Like from primary school to secondary school, there is a big change because you literally change schools. When you change schools, it is crucial because the people who are around you and who formed your societal construct, i.e. your classmates, no longer are with you. And when people around you don't know you, it gives you a very easy way to form a new identity.
It does.
Right? Because
once you start from a clean state, no one knows who you are.
Yeah.
There's no baggage, nothing.
Exactly. And it allows you to shed qualities, values, attributes, behaviors that you no longer feel serves your new identity, and to take on new ones that you feel you want. And I realized that was the case every single time I went through a change, primary school to secondary school to poly, university.
Is that an ideal state then?
For me, I think it's the ideal stage for change. When I got back from university, the first thing that I did was to move out of my parents' place. Even though it was costly, I had to get my own room and move out. I think it was necessary too, because who I was at home also formed and shaped my identity.
Right.
And I had to find a space to create somebody that I needed to be. And this was the same thing that I did in 2018 as well. Because in 2018, I desperately needed to find out again who I was and who I wanted to be. And so I basically shed everything.
Right.
My possessions, who I was, my environment. And I just left Singapore to travel the world full time for 2 years. I'm not saying that everybody needs to do that, but there needs to be a change of environment. And it could be something as simple as, getting a space for yourself or just doing something different, like changing the environment so that you have new friends, new peers, new people around you to give you a better idea of who you want to be.
So many of our viewers, the young ones, especially, they will tend to have these questions that they ask, first thing first is, actually, like what you just mentioned, you're the average of 5% that you mix with. Does that mean that you're going to start finding new friends? Right, that's one. Two, then you ask that if that's the case, then if the average of 5% maybe, does that include mentorship as well? Is mentorship important in terms of success growth? Right, whether or not it's just an entrepreneurial route or even as personal growth, right? Does mentorship actually help to guide that person? And how important is that?
I absolutely believe it's critical. So we can always be in this box, and this box is the box of comfort. This box of comfort is literally like, the default scenario. By default, if we wake up, right, these are by default the people around us, whether it's family, friends, peers, these are the people that are around us. If we want to have a change, we have to find somebody that shows us whether it's possible to have that change, or tells us the things that we need to know in order to make that change. Right, we have to look for information, and I think finding that 5 friends around you, or surrounding yourself with that 5 friends, or finding mentorship is a process of searching for information. That information shows us the possibilities, and that's the powerful thing. right? It allows us to change, and the change will bring us the progress that we want.
Right. So that said, if I were to really shift you back all the way, right, to age of 20, right, 3 years in Vodien with your partners and all, where Vodien is just start off, what was that one piece of advice you would give yourself back then? 5 more friends?
No. I don't think it's about the friends. I think it's about intentionality. I think intentionality is the one thing. And again, this is all about intentionality.
This is about a compass and an arrow, right?
Yeah, so this was inspired by like the old school nautical tattoos. Sailors will have a tattoo of a compass to symbolize being able to find their direction and get to their destination safely. And to me, I think this is a great symbol of purpose and intentionality. If you know where you're going and what you want, that is the first step and the most crucial thing in order to take the right steps towards it. If you don't know where you're going or what the destination is, then any road will lead you there, right? So you're just basically going with the flow. But you can chart your own destiny by knowing whatever the destination is beforehand. And I think that sense of intentionality is crucial, whether it's the grand vision behind your life, the vision behind your business, or something as simple as, why are you doing the things that you're doing? Like, why do you have that Lamborghini, or why are you doing, whatever? And that helps give you that direction and that progress that you need.
So let's expand that a little bit more, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you wore many hats, right? And today, right now, you are a business coach, you're super scaling, with the web hosting company as well, right? With that intention, right? How often do you actually force back and that actually guides you the direction? Because just now we mentioned at the start of the podcast, we talk about finances, right? And sometimes finances with intention, we tend to have a little bit of conflict of interest. Yeah, because we want to move certain direction, but that will cost money, that will cost time, right? So how do you make your decisions with intentions then?
So you understand why. So the way I look at things, right, is there's always going to be where you are and where you're going to go. If people don't know where they're going to go, then there's a big problem. So you always need to know where you're going to go, and that will give you the intent that you need. This happens with business as well. What is the reason why you're doing business? Is it just to make money? Then there's going to be a big problem, because push comes to shove when it comes to your competitor, and your competitor has a bigger passion, bigger purpose, better proficiency, or understands the problems that they are solving better. You, on the other hand, who's only driven by money, cannot hold a candle to that, right? And when your competitor goes about their day thinking about the business, thinks about the business before they sleep, dreams about the business, wakes up thinking about the business, he is going to go so much further than you, right? And intent is always behind, all the things that, that competitor is thinking about. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Is this the best way to do it? Does this bring us to the destination, or does it take us away from the destination? Intent is so crucial. I think there's a lot of businesses that, I coach, right, that do things, but they don't know the intent behind it. They think they need to do that, but it actually isn't very clear. Like some of them start hiring, but they don't know why they want to hire. They hire with the intent of growing the team, but first of all, it's the intent to make sure that a particular function is delegated? Is it to, just to grow the team, just so that we can tell people we have a big team? What is the intent? Right. If they are clear about the intent, then they can shape things to get themselves there, whether it's to, make sure that there are standard operating procedures, whether the process is clear, whether they know the kind of person that will add value to that kind of role. All that becomes so much clearer once they have the proper intent.
Since we're talking about qualities here, right, with intent in mind, what do you think, right, are there other attributes, qualities or mindsets, right, that also help contribute to the success of an individual?
I think being obsessed with things. really helps. And that's why I feel that, man, yeah, I get it about work-life balance, but I don't feel like it's something that, if you want change in your life, if you want success or significance, you cannot have work-life balance, because significance or success always comes with sacrifice. And if you're not willing to put in that sacrifice, you are not going to get success or significance.
Right. So that's it. With that qualities and mindset and all, right? Maybe let's share, a few words and key ways to the young ones, right? Because I think you have multiple years of experience and a business coach, right? If today you go to talk to a young, budding, aspiring entrepreneur, right? What sort of encouragement or key takeaways, right, you will give them so that they can actually start building a path? Because many of them are either they do not dare to take the first step, right? Or maybe they are somewhere into it, but they are unsure what's next. Because you mentioned that intent and all, right? What other, words that you think that is good for them?
Since we were just talking about it, I think one of the good points to be clear about is the difference between success and significance. I think a lot of times I get a question asked, what is success and what does it mean to you? And I think the problem comes when people, allocate too much time or attention or effort or, I guess attention
right
to this concept of success. The problem with success is that it's a lot about the individual.
Yeah.
How successful are you, like, financially, in your career, fitness, health, whatever. How successful are you? But again, it's very individual. A much better, much more sustainable, a much more long-lasting term is significance. Because with significance, now you're not caring about self, you're caring more about people around you. And that was the thing that drove us in terms of our entrepreneurship journey too.
Yeah.
Vodien as a company started off because we wanted success. As two young kids, all that we wanted was financial success in terms of just like making sure that we had a pocket money and that we had a salary and all that.
Yes.
But after a while, we realized that the reason why our business was succeeding and became more popular was because of significance. Significance because of the people that we served, the companies, the customers that relied on us to create the websites, the email hosting, and make sure that they properly ran and didn't go down, right? That was a vote of trust, and they relied on us, right? And if you think that's the only thing that your business or your company does, then man, you're missing the next bigger part, right? Which is your team. Because throughout the journey, the team that Vodien built, the people that were in it, the business actually depended on them, and they depended on the business as well. And it wasn't just them, it was their livelihoods that impacted their families and whatnot. Right. And so the quality of leadership that you bring to the table as a business owner is immense. It's crazy. You think about the number of people that are impacted by the decisions that you make in your business. That's crazy. So there's a lot of responsibility there. And that is significance. Making sure that the business that you run isn't just financially successful.
Ties back to the intent, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. It does.
So in every podcast, we always ask our guest speaker, because over here we've heard about intent, we've heard about passion, or in fact obsession, right? That's the word that you use, right? And that's it. What's that one word that you have to choose out of all the many words that you have given us, right? What's the one word that you give to the young ones, right? And that you strongly believe that they need it?
Intent. Then it has to be intent. Like if we know why we are doing certain things, then I think everything becomes clearer. Yeah, intent has got to be the word.
So before I end off this podcast, any last word that you want to give to our viewers out there, right, as they kick off the entrepreneurship journey?
Well, I think that you need to live life by design and not just let things happen by default. And yeah, that's actually another way of saying intent and being intentional. So
you voice back to the one word that you strongly believe in and the passion.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much, Alvin. So today we have heard Alvin's entrepreneurial journey, and he has taught us that in the face of adversity, determinations, and a forward-looking mindset can turn obstacles into stepping stones and can start as young as 17. I hope today's podcast has ignited your mission. Join us for more no bullshit stories from successful individuals on Mission at Night. See you again. Hi guys, thank you for listening. If you like what you have just heard, follow us for more content like this.